Hello, this is Brian Foster, and I'm live streaming to you on August 29th, 2021, and we're talking about Spiritism. And today, as we've been doing for Sundays, quite many Sundays, is we're talking about the book Evolution in Two Worlds. I'm going to go over chapter 15 and 16. Chapter 15 is magnetic passes, and chapter 16 is determining gender in the spirit world. How do we determine what we want to come back as? Because the Spirits book has told us we can come back either as a male or a female. So first, let's get started with chapter 15, magnetic passes. Let me bring this down here, and I'll bring that up. And so the question on magnetic passes is, how are we to look at Spiritist magnetic passes from the human medicine point of view? Now, they use the word magnetic. We don't use that word very much, but it's more like a energy, a force of energy. And if you'll see like Ricky and stuff like that, it's a spiritual force. And so they use the word magnetic passes. So let's carry on. Actually, in order to use human vocabulary to get a precise idea about the power of the magnetic fluid, which constitutes a controlled emanation of mental force using a lever of the will, it'd be worthwhile to look at our vehicle of manifestation as being the organic state in which we express ourselves as immortal spirits in multifarious evolutionary graduation. From our simplest conceptualization using the phraseology technique of incarnate individuals, the cellular sphere can be divided into essential parts: the visible hemisphere or somatic field, and the hemisphere that is invisible for now to ordinary earthly senses, that is the psychosomatic field. The former is a physiological vehicle capable of offering concrete elements of study for histological research. The latter is the paraspirit of Kardashian definition, that is the spiritual body, which presides over all the formations of the physical body. Thus, considering the vehicle of exteriorization of the intelligence as an organic state that is perfectly structured in its base of behavior, it is easy to see its organs as being various provinces differentiated among themselves, although united in harmonious activity for a common objective. Cells, as microscopic entities living in distinct communities like infinitesimal societies characterized by specific activities. I think a lot of this, let me stop there for a second, a lot of this has to go with kind of our force centers, are, as they say, well, first let me show this. So he talked about the paraspirit. So when he says the hidden and non-hidden, so the body, the physical body, is what he's talking about, is what you see. And he says, now, how does the paraspirit, which is hidden, how does that affect the body, though? So what we've been told is the paraspirit, which is, you could call it kind of a representation of what we look at when we're in the spirit. That's when we come, when we pass over, we still think we're alive, some of us, right? And because we look the same, we feel the same, but that's your paraspirit, who is showing your body the way you looked as you just passed away. Your paraspirit covers your physical body and is connected to every cell. And your paraspirit is a combination of matter and energy. And your spirit, of course, is connected to your paraspirit. The paraspirit does other things. Like, it's also as if it's a universal translator. It remembers every language that you've ever spoken to in your past lives. That's why some people all of a sudden will be able to speak another language. And they'll say, well, how can they do that? And yet they never learned that language, not in the life they're in now. But that's because somehow this knowledge came through the paraspirit, and they were able to speak that language. It's not speaking every language ever done or in the universe. It's the languages that you've learned as you went through many lives. I thought that'd be a little interesting tidbit. So then, if you look at the paraspirit covers everything, and then the paraspirit controls, let me find out, different parts of our body, which Spiritism calls force centers, but really a lot of other, the Eastern religions call chakras, which is the crown center, the third eye. And so these are kind of how these microscopic groups group themselves on all these different areas. So representing the hematopoietic system in the human body, the combination of circulating energies in the psychosoma, energies absorbed by the mind through respiration from the infinite reservoir of the cosmic fluid. It is toward this cosmic fluid we must turn most of our attention. Now, he calls it cosmic fluid. Uh, you'll see mostly it's named as universal fluid. And universal fluid is the building block of everything. Universal fluid, by the force of the will and spirits through their thought is action in spirit world, by putting this universal fluid and making it different combinations of harmony and vibrations and density, it creates every element that we have in our universe, and it also people use it to create trees and buildings, all sorts of things. It is towards this cosmic fluid we must turn most of our attention, so that it is closely associated with the nervous stimulus or the apparatus of communication between the governance of the above reference symbolic state and its provinces and citizens, the organs and cells. So you've got the so let me also say passes. So the way passes work is you'll have a you'll sit down in a chair, and I've been through these. You'll sit down in a chair, you're into a room, kind of nice music, whatever, a little darkened, not completely dark, but darkened. And you'll have a medium in front of you, and they'll like wave their arms, or they won't touch you, but they'll wave their arms, at least in spirit centers. Now behind that medium is a spirit that will use the medium to fashion universal fluid to help whatever center that you need in your body, because everybody's a little bit unique on how they're the combination. So they will use that physical medium to filter out and gather the type of fluid that's basic for you that will help whatever part of the body that they think is needed. I've had passes in spiritual centers, I've been to healing centers, and I've felt you can feel the effects of those passes, and they made me feel better. I never had to have some sort of miraculous cure, so I can't attest to that. In fact, one medium I talked to says he could see spirits, and what he saw when this room where people were giving passes, he saw spirits that would, let's say if you look at a room and then there's chairs along the perimeter of the room, and the chair is the back to the wall, and then you sit down, and then a medium will come and stand in front of you. So he says as soon as people came into that room, a spirit would take that person walking to the room and put them in the chair that they selected, probably they selected for the best medium that they could use to help that person. And he also said that what he saw is the spirits move so fast, right? It was like robots moving in high speed, which shows you the high speed of the spirit system, spiritual universe compared to us slow. In fact, spirits will complain when they're trying to communicate to humans. It is so slow. That's why it's hard to communicate. It's hard to send messages to us because we think slow, we speak slow, we do everything extremely slow compared to them. It's almost like, when we're talking to a baby and they just, they can't catch a ball, or, it's like you throw them a ball when they're 2 or 3 and you throw them and it hits their hands and then they close it, right? It's so cute, but that's kind of how we appear. Now, why do we appear that way? Why do we have to go through this? Well, because our physical body is made specifically for us, for not to be rich, not to be a genius, not to be the best person in the room. It's for us to change our attitude and our character, and therefore our body's made so we always have this stimuli coming at us for us to learn the lessons, the emotional lessons. We're about primitive emotions and replace them with advanced emotions: love, charity, fraternity. That's why we're on Earth. It's not really doesn't serve to increase your intellectual capability. Our intellectual capability is nothing compared to a spirit. It's for our emotional needs. Okay, let me carry on with this. Okay, I'll probably repeat this sentence, but I think it's good. It is towards this cosmic fluid that we must turn most of our attention, since it is closely associated with the nervous stimuli, or the apparatus of communication between the governance of the above referenced symbolic state and its provinces and citizens, the organs and cells. Corresponding to the vital centers of the perispirit, which is on the screen, which is the chakras, which we cannot yet comprehend due to the absence of suitable human terminology. We have all sorts of systems that are divided in numerous families that constant work, from the productive power plants in the spleen, bone, marrow, liver, ganglia to the organs. We recognize the magnetic fluid's ability to enable individuals to mutually influence one another, but it acts with much more latitude and efficiency upon the cellular entities of the organic state, particularly the blood and the histolytic cells, using automatic commands from the deep conscious to determine their appropriate level, migration, or extreme mobility, or to produce antibodies, or even to create other combative and immunological means for defending against bacterial invasion and reducing or terminating pathogenic processes. So, the body is complex, and the body defends itself. And through the energy that's released by a spirit into our body, which is this force of energy, it will then repair, it will change, and it will fight infections, bacterial infections. It will repair heart muscles. It can do a lot. Now, how can it do that? Now, he's saying how it does that, but if this book is really written from a biological energy point of view, and so he's saying that energy will change and affect the cells in our body, and it will repair, rearrange, transform some cells, make them better, etc. Now, I also ask you to look at it from a point of view of really what the spirit universe is. The spirit universe is just huge universal database in which we are logical components, in which we are able, through different accessories as we go higher in the spirit world, able to see and detect, smells, all our senses, other pieces of data point, but being able to do that through what we see as a 3D or 4D interpretation. So think of a robot on Earth with cameras for eyes, and of course it goes into that robot and it tries to recreate the picture, but it's really data, and then with that data it determines if that's a square or a face or whatever. We are much more complex than that, so we are given ability to be as a spirit, this personality, they call it personalities, and we are able to see and detect things and interpret it through these different logical interfaces that we have. And that's why when you're in the spirit world, you can be a spirit, which means you just look like a being, light. People will some say see like light coming to them. And then when you're like stop, if you want to, you can appear as your paraspirit, and that other person will see you as your paraspirit. Or if you don't want that, they'll just see you as a little ball of light. It's how to use your mind. So you can see that we are this logical construct as a spirit, and the paraspirit is our communication to what are the logic of our physical construct. And therefore, when these mediums stand behind us and want to change us, they may think in terms of cells and bacteria, but it may, and this is my conjecture, it may just then, that is interpreted into changing the parameters of your physical entity, or changing processes and procedures and how it works, but probably mostly it changes parameters of the state of each cell. There's probably data in there that tells you the state of each cell, what it's in, and then the state of each of your centers. So you can look at it two different ways. Depends what helps you understand who we are in the spirit world the best, because all all sorts of people. In fact, someone just said, the blessings of light to you. Now, to me, is what's interesting is the Hindus and yogis, and they talk about, oh, we're just light. We're just light. And if you want to know, so what is just light? Well, what is a database? It's just energy. It's just, you can call it light. And so that's what we are. We're really energy. We're in this spirit universe in which we are energy, but we're not dispersed energy. We're not random energy. We are into uh, logical groupings. And so the fact that we're energy and logical groupings doesn't mean that we're not any less unique or wonderful people. We've just, through multiple lives, we have within our parameters, within our distinct personality, as they say, we have, by the grace of God, we have developed our own intelligence. So I hope that helps. I hope that doesn't hinder, but there's different ways you can look at it. So when people say we're light, I believe, and then what you're reading a lot of ancient text and people, I think that's what they mean. We are really logic, living logic, much more complicated. I'm using pretty primitive analogies, but we will see. Okay, where was I? Oh, we recognize the magnetic fluid's ability to enable individuals to mutually influence one another, but it acts with much more light to efficient. Okay, I said that already. Oh, let me go to the next one. Every moral failure is in responsible individual causes a certain lesion in the psychosomatic hemisphere or paraspirit, which appears as disharmony in the somatic hemisphere or physical vehicle, thereby provoking certain causes of pain. Pain, therefore, in this or that form, is always a situation of a warning or emergency and lasts a longer or shorter time, requiring the aid of medicine for the body or the soul to effect relief or healing. So think about that for a second. So when he says every moral failure is responsible in responsible individuals causes a certain lesion in the psychosomatic hemisphere or paraspirit. So when you do things wrong and you feel bad about that, you set up stress in your body. And scientifically, we've proven that a person who is stressed, it's easier for them to get sick. It's harder for them to get better. And in fact, that what studies have also said is the more spiritual people are, the longer they live and the healthier they are. So think about that for a second. So when studies say that, if you look at it just from a completely materialistic point of view, that should be not possible. That should be no. If we have no spirit or soul, then bacteria affects us the same as everyone, and all our bodies are different. But why should this certain subset of people who are more spiritual be healthier? Because within that group, there must be all sorts of diverse people. That's because of what was just said. And that's, again, what's the beauty of Spiritism is that we're here to live and to learn to be better people. And when we deny our conscience, and when these suggestions come to us, usually through our inferior spirits, to do something that's not positive and negative towards people, we kind of feel bad, and that decreases our harmony, and therefore our sickness goes. Yes, and here's a better explanation. Your physical stress causes the body to release cortisol, which is known to cause premature aging and facilitate illnesses. So exactly. And therefore, so how do you decrease physical stress? Well, you listen to your conscience, and that's what I've said over and over again. In fact, that's why I wrote my book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism. And it's a 24-step It was a poem by Andre Luis. There's 24 stanzas, and each stanza is like 3 or 4 words. And I went through each one of how to get inner peace. Be patient, listen to your conscience, study hard, all these things, perseverance and goodness. All these things is to get you to understand who you are, what you are, why you're on earth, and how to, if you always turn your conscience on and you listen to that, your stress level is going to go way down, because first of all, you're not going to do things that are counterproductive in the first place. Even though, and we've all done that, right? In fact, in our teens and early 20s, everyone's different. I'm sure a lot of people are superior to me. But I mean, I went through a lot of part of my life back in my early teenagers and adulthood is rationalizing away why I didn't have to follow my conscience, right? And a primitive spirit hardly even listens to their conscience. That's why there's different levels of people, because on this planet of atonement, there are different spiritual maturity levels of people, and some, they barely even learn to listen to their conscience yet. So the more you learn to live by the divine laws, right? And Spiritism says the golden rule is the main thing, is to treat everyone as you want to be treated yourself. The better off you are. So that is an important point. And it's all about the fact for all of us to understand that we're on earth to learn to become better people. We're not on earth to have a yacht or the best, house or a bunch of cars, which is fine. If you get wealth, honestly, use it. Don't feel guilty about it. But the people who have accumulated wealth through kind of not honorable means, they will be under stress. And that's why in the Spirits book, they asked, the question was, what's the hardest trial? And they said, to be rich. Of course, everyone says, well, I like that trial. Well, the problem with being rich is that you can act as mean and rotten as you want, and everyone will still kiss up to you and let you get away with being not a nice person. And in fact, they'll even give you suggestions of how not to be even a less nice person. And that's why, and then, then you're idle, and then you want more. So it is tough. It is tough. Okay. By using magnetic passes, however, especially those based upon the divine wellspring of prayer, the will strengthened in the good can uplift the weaker will of another, so that the latter, now confident, can naturally magnetize the millions of microscopic agents at its disposal, so that the organic state in this or that contingency can be restored to equilibrium. So you can look at it again 2 different ways. You can look at it as you're this logical construct. You are now have a greater force of will, and you're able to command your centers better, or you are this physical body. You release less cortisol. Your stress levels are down. I'm sure there's all other things, and therefore your body can now create better immunity and starts healing itself in a more advanced and efficient state. And it all has to do with trying to follow your conscience and being a moral person. That doesn't mean you have to wear a hair shirt. It doesn't mean you have to go to a cave and live by yourself, right? Because people ask me that. Well, if I just never talk to anybody, do anything, I can't do anything bad. Well, the problem with that is that no, part of our mission on earth, everyone, is to help other people, and to help not just other people, but help the whole culture and advance. So the spirit world, Jesus, God do not want us to be this person in this cabin in the mountains and living by ourselves. They want us out there interacting with people, and part of that interacting, we go through our trials. We learn how to love people, even though many times they're completely unlovable. But we learn to love them by looking at them as a work in progress, right? They're in this life. They're making a lot of mistakes. They're doing maybe bad things, but we know someday that they will be good spirits as they go higher, as they go through life after life, learning their lessons. That doesn't mean they have to be, they shouldn't be put in jail or stopped. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to be a pushover, but just to understand them and forgive them for the stupid things that they do, and forgive ourselves for stupid things we do. After all, we're on a planet of atonement, meaning that we've got a lot to learn. Okay, I'll carry on. Thus, when we pray on our own behalf, we attract divine energy for the renewal of our human energies. And when we pray for others or assist them with magnetic energy available to all spirits that truly wish to serve, it always ensures their best possibilities for self-readjustment. We must understand, however, that even though love consoles, instructs, soothes, uplifts, heals, and redeems, we are all subject to the justice to which we have willingly yielded before eternal life. A justice that, according to the teaching of our Lord Jesus Christ, says to each according to their deeds, according to his deeds. So we need to remember that good or bad deeds are the result of our daily choices, and for that very reason, we can alter the course of our own pathway each and every day. And of course, and that's what I've said. Another effect, I've had YouTube videos on that is stay in the present. Now, when I say stay in the present, is see what's happening. Yes, people who are successful think about the future, they plan for the future, but part of you has to stay in the present and see what stimuli are coming at you. So because you're being daily tested. And look, I know I've been daily tested, and I mean, like every day I miss some tests. I do something stupid. I remember one day I was sitting in my chair and I was thinking, yeah, I'm doing better. And then my dog was next to me, just all of a sudden just barked real loud, and I just put my hand down and just whacked him on the head. And I go, oh, okay. I thought, why did I do that? And that was to show me, that's probably to show me right there, is like, nah, he may think you're doing better, but you got a long ways to go. And so, yeah, we're on Earth. Now remember, we're on Earth not just to do well and keep our mouth shut and be nice. We're on Earth to rewire our whole brain, our whole personality and character. That is a lifelong task. So don't think you're going to be this holy person after a month or a year. This is going to be your whole life. And I'm still far from where I want to be. Okay, what is the speed of fluidic emissions of passes? This question at heart involves a study of the structural potential composition of the thought particle, a composition for which we do not possess any in terms of human language. So, makes sense. I think the speed is much faster than we ever know, and I think it's the speed of thought, which, again, I like to say, there's a speed of light. The speed limit in our physical universe is the speed of light. There is no speed limit in the spirit universe. It's the speed of thought. Okay, now let's talk about determining gender, chapter 16 in the evolution of two worlds. The question is, how should we look at the possibility of human science supporting gender determination and at the beginning of gestation? This is what he says. Understanding that the gonadal design in vertebrates contains bisexual potentialities when it begins to form, it is entirely possible for science to intervene to determine gender at the very beginning of embryonic life. Even so, we must remember that such interference in the territory of human destinies would have unforeseeable consequence for humans' moral organization, because such an inappropriate act would only affect the morphological field, perhaps imposing unnecessary inversions and causing grave complications in the inner life of all those who would have been subjected to such experimental procedures, which are completely contrary to the intelligence of life that reflects the wisdom of God. So that was the whole part of that chapter. So what's he telling us? Don't interfere with that. Now, when that book was written, there was not any of the wide range of transgenderism, the ability to have all these operations. So my thing is, well, my opinion, this is just my opinion, is God bless all these people are going through these feelings and going through these transformations. But all I would like to put down on the table is for something to think about. So let's go and think about where we're at. We're on the planet of atonement. as being on a planet of atonement. And let me go through, let me bring this up here because I think this is important. Because remember, it says to each according to his deeds. So karma. So in your previous life, everything is recorded, everything, your thoughts, every detail. Your current life is your whole educational, your blueprint, your predestination is determined by results from your previous life and maybe lives before that. It's where you're at. It's a custom made. Now, I had someone email me and say, well, why should I do anything if everything's predetermined? Well, it's really the trials and episodes. You have choices within your trials and episodes. So, as an example, you are put into a place of responsibility, and you all of a sudden are given an opportunity. It's like there's a whole bunch of money right in front of you that you could take, and you knew nobody would see it. For instance, you have a choice to take that money or not. It's not predetermined if you're going to rob or not rob. So the fact that you were put into that job, into that situation, that part was predetermined. Your choices within that are not. So in a previous life, and this is an example from one of the books by Spiritism mediums. This one man had spent his previous life, or let's say man in that life, he was like a pimp. Right back there, he owned a bar. He was terrible to women. He treated women like dirt. He beat them. It was horrible. Well, guess what? His next life, what did he come back as? He came back as a woman. Why? Why would the spirit world do that? Because he was so mean to them. He had no sympathy, nothing. They said, okay, you're going to be a woman in your next life because you need to understand how they feel. And I believe a lot of that, and then vice versa. There's been stories I've read of women who will just use men, poison them when they find where their money is. All these things. As we all know here, humans are capable of pretty bad things. And then that woman in her next life would be born as a man. And then let's talk about why is there genders. And it all has to do with heuristics. One of this, in what I read in one of the books, is that we could have been born asexual, where we could just reproduce ourselves. But the spirit world wanted us to learn about the different aspects of passive and active behavior, passive and aggressive behavior, we can say. Probably passive and active behavior. And then a male expresses active and passive behavior in a way, and a female expresses passive and active behavior in another way. And if we were asexual, it would take us a lot harder to learn this quadrant of 4 different choices, right? So now, by breaking the problem down, I said, okay, we're going to make you into 2 sexes, because eventually, gender is not important. Jesus Christ is a combination of all active and passive male, active and passive female. And therefore, we'll all be that someday. The aspect of that, of your gender, is not important. So we're here to learn that. But what happens, of course, we're still humans, and so many people are learning. So I believe that a lot of people who are now wanting to transform themselves, which I can understand, because they were one gender in their previous life or lives, because spirits kind of tendency to stay the same gender over multiple lives. It just feels too weird for them. It just doesn't feel right, and they want to change it. The problem with this is if you change it. And I think this is why these people who do this, their suicide rate is so high, is I think deep down and somehow in their intuition and their instinct, they know that they're not following the blueprint of their life. Because if they do that, they're going to have to go back again the next life, because they are set here on earth to learn a certain lesson. And if you don't learn that lesson, guess what? You got to do it another time. That's why I always say, people don't want to be reincarnated again, don't want to be here and have a, kind of a tough life. Well, be as good as you can in this life, and your life in your next life is going to be much better. You'll go through experiences, but a lot of these things that dramatically transform your character won't be needed, because your character will be pretty good. So I believe, probably not all of it, I'm sure there's other reasons, because people have been both sexist. I think that's a lot of reason for bisexuality, is you can be attracted to both. But from people going through that drasticness of transforming themselves, I believe a lot of that is probably from their past life, or past couple of lives, you could say, and they just don't feel comfortable in their body. And you hear people say, "I don't feel comfortable in my body. I just don't feel like I'm that gender," and I understand that. On the other hand, if you want to get through that lesson from the spirit world, you may want to tough it out, but that's your free will. I'm not saying it's morally wrong. I'm just saying that it's a decision that makes your ascendance into the spirit hierarchy less efficient. And so I hope that I say that, because as spiritists, we should love everyone, no matter